Salutations, everybody. Welcome back to our channel. Here we share the untold stories of faith, family, and the struggles of staying united in a broken world. If you haven't done so already, please follow, and enable notifications. Because of this, you will never again miss a moment of our dedicated content. Today, we will talk about a Daystar Drama series that has the power to both educate and move you. The Unhappy Marriage of Joni Lamb to Dr. Doug Weiss is the subject of this article's criticisms. Everyone, including her family and the Daystar Ministry, is taken aback by the marriage. There are lessons, pain, and a call to discernment in this story. It has both threatening messages from famous people and sincere pleas from her own children. We should begin immediately. To fully grasp the subject, let's go back to the important events that led up to this troubled marriage. November 21st, 2021 is the date of Marcus Lamb's passing. He was Joni's husband. January 27th, 2022 is the deadline for the funeral. Doug and Lisa Weiss have decided to end their 30-year marriage and seek a divorce. Today, May 31st, 2022 is the date. June 4th to 9th, 2022 is the official separation date between Doug and Lisa. There has been phone communication between Joni and Doug, according to Joni. The date is July 2022. In addition to Lisa Weiss, Denise Bogg is also coaching Doug. Date plans between Joni and Doug are set to begin in August 2022. The $37,000 vacation resort debt that Joni incurred in October 2022 was paid for using Daystar credit cards. The date is May 2023. At the same resort, Joni adds an extra $60,000 each night. The wedding day for Joni and Doug is scheduled for June 10th, 2023. That will be in August 2023. The Lamb's employment is terminated during the Daystar board meeting, Jonathan included. Even though her children and other powerful Christians were against the marriage, Joni went ahead and tied the knot. First, we'll take a look at the viewpoints of her detractors, starting with her own children. I will begin by addressing the views voiced by Joni's offspring, namely her son Jonathan Lamb. Most people would have been surprised to learn of the family's suffering from his moving letter to his mom. According to Jonathan's letter, the family is going through a tough time. Jimmy said in his piece that Susie and I were rude for voicing our concerns during that conversation. You made a threat to fire us if we didn't read user comments that were nice to Doug? In their eyes, Joni's marriage to Susie was an attempt to force them to abandon their religious duties and their beliefs. In their letters to one another, they shared their deepest emotions of hurt and terror. Even though they went to the wedding to show their love for each other, Jonathan said the arrangement couldn't work. Now let's have a look at the angry and sad letter that Pastor Valerie Hartwell sent. March 2023 saw the death of Pastor Roy Hartwell, Valerie's spouse of 29 years. I have serious reservations about the details of Joni and Doug Weiss's marriage, according to her. According to Valerie's letter, I would actually dare say that there were hundreds of communications with Joni Lamb. Talks with Joni Lamb occurred often. Caution was urged by both intelligent and less intellectual people, as well as by those who didn't take themselves seriously. One of the letters bore the signature of Pastor Valerie Hartwell. In addition to losing her husband, she writes an open letter to Joni. In light of your exchanges, this is what she conveyed to that person. In response to our discussion around Thanksgiving 2023, I wrote you a letter in which I shared my concerns with your hasty marriage. Tragically, I have also lost a spouse. My husband, Senior Pastor Roy Hartwell, and I were married for 29 years when he passed away in March 2023. How quickly you fell in love stunned me. You mentioned Doug and Jimmy Evans in your wedding film and engagement announcement. Upon seeing that, I reached out to Jimmy and you, as president of Daystar, for utilizing Jimmy to denigrate Doug's ex-wife in an effort to preserve the integrity of your marriage. Your children, and you should have had time to grieve and adjust to the loss of their father and grandfather before starting a new relationship. I told Dr. Doug, or whatever you want to call him. Because I think you're deserving of this call, I made it. It would have been inappropriate for Doug, a licensed psychologist, to interrupt a young widow and her family as they were dealing with the loss of a loved one. He feels humiliated, but you, the president, mother, and grandma of Daystar, should feel far worse by approving of this vile and immoral union. Your family and Daystar are no longer associated. Quickly after I emailed you, you replied, advising me not to judge your suffering by its duration. Joni, what are you saying? There was a 6-month gap between when you started dating and when Doug's divorce was finalized. Gathered around your friend Tom, you and your son Jonathan attempted to portray your grief over Marcus's death to Jonathan. You even wrote a book during the storm to make it seem like being a widow was hard for you, even though that's obviously not the case. Doug claims that Jesus died on the cross so that people like us could have satisfying sexual relations. I told you to address that in my letter to you from Thanksgiving 2023. I was trying to get across to you how the statement, made by a Christian doctor, will hinder the healing process for children in South Africa and will only serve to legitimize the pedophile, prostitute, or other sex offenders' treatment of them. It had never occurred to me that your new spouse at Daystar was giving more priority to you and your wife, Susie, than to Jonathan and Susie's daughter. I had no idea that their little kid was causing them so much emotional distress. This is something my mom always told me. Even though there are a lot of guys, no one will ever be able to steal your kids. Because you are overly proud of yourself, you have abandoned your children to be with Doug, a man who has ruined marriages for countless people, even wise widows. Just because you remarried quickly doesn't mean you can use the so-called false promises as an excuse. Bible prophecy should be accurate. It pains me to be the bearer of bad news to you, Joni, but the assurances you held fast to and even mentioned in your book in order to convince people to accept your marriage were completely unfounded. If you are still able to do so, it is the right thing to do to leave the service. You have caused Daystar, your children, and grandchildren unimaginable pain by putting your own wants before those of the Lord. You should get out of the military for their benefit. Enjoy your time with Doug to the fullest by tending to your mental, emotional, and spiritual health. Since your spouse is a highly skilled psychotherapist, I have little doubt that your son Jonathan is the rightful heir of Daystar, and Doug can help you transfer ownership to him. You should declare before you go to sleep that you are a loving and caring mother, and show your love in a way that helps your children, granddaughters, and grandchildren fulfill their God-given destiny, callings, and future for Daystar and the Lord. Says Pastor Valerie Hartwell of Jesus Unlimited Church in Washington, D.C. There is a hint of terror in Valerie's remarks, despite their power. Joni claims that her relationship with Doug pales in comparison to the pain of losing her children and grandchildren. Valerie further casts doubt on the marriage by making forecasts, which she claims she did. Every prediction in her view must be in harmony with the teachings of the Bible. For the lucky among you, how are you feeling? Should people be worried about Valerie's writing, or did she come across as too harsh? Feel free to express your opinions in the space provided. Denise Bogg, a minister and important advisor, is another person who has come out in this new case. Considering the potential effects of Joni's choice on Denise's spiritual life, it is clear that she is rather worried about it. To Denise and the Lamb family, welcome. To the Lamb, she writes, I am writing this letter with a heavy heart in my heart. During our meeting last week before the baby shower, Joni gave a speech that made me quite nervous. It was as if we had never met before, she seemed. It seems like a ghost of uncertainty has taken up residence in her right now. She smiled as she recounted an insulting comment that Doug made to her, which was particularly offensive given her Christian faith. It seemed like Joni Lamb was joyful, which was different from the Joni Lamb I knew before. A person is duping or luring you when they flatter you with the goal of attracting you to them. Observing the evil spirit's deeds could lead you to your spiritual enemy. When people are possessed by a deceitful spirit, they are more likely to tell lies. A deceitful ghost first obtains entrance by use of seduction. Any man worth his salt will try to win over a woman in order to find out where she's vulnerable. When women fall for the charm fallacy, they are readily influenced by other people. According to Galatians 5, you should stay away from evildoers because they bring no good fruit. Instead, you should fix them. As soon as it grows dark, we have two options. You may either ignore it or face it directly. The choice is yours. Therefore, in this case, flattery takes precedence over deceit. When people give up to charm, they let other people trick them. When someone flatters you, your opponent can notice all your shortcomings. I voiced my concerns about Doug to Joni during their initial meeting, but she ignored me and continued to sing Doug's praises. I woke up at this point. I knew she was plagued by a deceitful spirit. I told her to be careful about things she felt strongly about from her past. Possession by a spirit of deceit causes the possessed individual to start acting strangely toward you. their current words would never have been expressed in the past. For this reason, I'd want to voice my reservations about Daystar. Daystar is the target of the attack. Viewers won't be fooled since Daystar lived up to the lofty expectations set by Marcus and Joni during their time together. Right then, they'll be able to detect trickery. Upon seeing Joni's changes, people will notice something is wrong, and the audience size will drop significantly. Given Marcus Lamb's lengthy tenure as their leader, they will not be fooled. Nothing is right, and they will be able to tell the difference between the present and past leadership. A Daystar relative named Marcus Lamb has been serving as head of state. Right and truth were causes he passionately championed. I have been shown by the Lord that the enemy is harming Doug. If Joni gives in to Doug's demands and helps him lead, Daystar viewers will know he's not telling the truth. In reality, he's a wolf pretending to be a sheep. Such a major part is too much for him. The enemy is trying to get Daystar to submit by using him as a bargaining chip. One of the most powerful Christian television networks in the country, Daystar, was used by the enemy to mock the marriage commitment. Joni had previously opposed the breakup before learning this falsehood. My impression of Doug was formed after we spent a few days together. I made it clear to her before we got married that we needed to handle the issues from her previous marriage. At first, your mom reassured me that they would listen to me, but she told me that when Jimmy Evans gave Doug the go-ahead, they had no interest in talking to me. After chatting with Doug for 3 days, I finally understand what went wrong with his first marriage and why it ended in divorce. The fact that the causes of the first marriage's breakdown are being overlooked is the most worrisome part. On Friday before the shower, I visited with your mom, and she listed all the people who were in favor of your union with Doug again. Because I am cognizant of the fundamental problems, I can see the red flags that other people fail to notice. If Doug is to be believed, Jimmy Evans knows about Doug. Jimmy Evans maintains his support for this marriage despite his limited knowledge of the earlier one. I don't see how you can know Joni is safe with him if you don't know what happened. Millions of people depend on Daystar, and Joni's health, reputation, and family legacy are all at risk. Everyone who has any concern for Jimmy Evans should ask God to make him understand how serious this issue is and how important it is for the advancement of God's kingdom. When you get your checks, I hope you'll all be smart enough to resist the urge to touch the minimize button. I hope you can put Marcus's lengthy history of punishing you behind you and work together as a team. You must be truthful with your mother if you want her to perceive things as they really are. It would be my pleasure to meet all of you and represent you. Denise, you all look just stunning. Okay, so when we found that letter, I sprang right into action. With a loud voice, I told all 6 of us, hey, we need to meet Mom and talk to her about this. I cut off the call after that. The next day, I approached my mom at Daystar and said, hey, I'd like to meet with you, and we could have a family meeting after the show. I went along with her request that we have one. Upon seeing me, she extended an invitation to meet at her office following the event's conclusion. Hey, she exclaimed without hesitation, Doug and I need to take a plane to New York.